Hi, I'm Andrea and welcome to Productive C Sharp. In this video, I'm going to talk about raw string literals in C Sharp 11. Here I have a console application targeting .NET 7 and C Sharp 11. I have a JSON file here with articles. Every article has a title and a URL. What I want to do is to show you how you can create a string in C Sharp containing this JSON using C Sharp 10 and then see how you can improve that using C Sharp 11 raw string literals. What I'm going to do is to copy the content of the file and go to the program and paste it inside this verbatim string. As you all know, up to C Sharp 10, verbatim strings was the only way to create multi-line strings in C Sharp. You might have noticed when I copied the code, automatically Visual Studio added two quotes in order to escape the quote in JSON. Okay, so that's something you need to do in verbatim strings. Every character that required escaping, you need to escape it inside verbatim strings. That might makes the process of copying JSON or XML or any other sequence of characters that contains special characters harder because you need to change them and escape them. Okay, but that's what we've been done up until now. If I run this code, you can see that is effectively printing the JSON that we pasted, including all the indentation that we have in the file and the line breaks. Let's say we want to then use string interpolation to use a placeholder instead of the title in here. So let me try to create a variable called title, for example, and add the content of the title in it. And using curly brackets, I can use the title variable as a placeholder. But you notice that this doesn't quite work because the compiler, so if I run, I need to use the dollar in order to make this interpolated verbatim string. Okay, the compiler is getting a bit upset because it's confusing these braces here as the start of a potential placeholder, and so the code doesn't compile. In order to resolve this problem, you need to escape even the braces. In this case, this one, and this one. So now this title here is effectively a placeholder. The compiler knows that that's a placeholder. If I run this code, as you might expect, is printing the what's new in C Sharp 11 here, right? Replacing the placeholder with the actual value at compile time. Okay, so you might be thinking, okay, that's not a big deal, right? So yeah, it is a big deal because if you ever work with code bases where you need to use very big multi-line strings inside the code, or if you do that for testing reason, that is quite common, it can become very, very tedious to deal with escape sequences. Okay, and then when you want to then copy this code back to other external tools, you will have all the escaping that you need to remove and so on. So it's making working with multi-line strings a little bit annoying in C Sharp. I want to show you now how you can use raw string literals to make all of this a lot simpler. So let me remove all the content here. And in order to create a raw string literal, you need to use a sequence of 3 double quotes in order to wrap any content you want. So let me go back to the JSON file, copy all this inside this raw string literal. Twice, and there we go. Now, I didn't have to do any escaping, so when I pasted, Visual Studio didn't help me to do any escaping because it's not needed. So here I can use simple quotes. So if I run this code, it's printing what you would expect. So using raw string literals, you can basically handle multi-line strings inside C# code without ever worrying about escaping. Whatever you copy is whatever you're going to get. In addition to that, though, the compiler is doing some additional things. You already notice here that despite I have an empty line at the beginning, this has been removed. So the C# compiler always remove the line breaks at the beginning and at the end of the raw string literal. But it also does something more. If you have the closing quote sequence indented, let's say of 2 characters indented, the compiler is going to remove all the indentation inside the raw string literals as well. So if you can see, all of this rectangle here I've highlighted will be removed when the string is created by the compiler. So if I run this code, you can see the string, the JSON code, start without indentation. So that's quite powerful and extremely useful because it allows you to kind of arrange the code and make it looks a little bit nicer without having to worry about adding too much indentation. Okay, there's always been a problem with the verbatim strings because if you really want to remove the indentation, you need to align everything, back to the beginning of the file. It might not be the best looking code, but also keep in mind that if you reduce the number of indentation here at the closing quote sequence, the compiler is only removing that part. So you can still have a subset of the indentation. So you can basically use the closing quote sequence to dictate the leftmost column for the string literal. Okay. But what happens when we want to also combine raw string literal with interpolated strings? So let's say I want to use title here. Can I do it? Right. Let's try to use the dollar symbol here to make this interpolated raw string literal, and I'm going to try to use title here. What happened? Okay, the compiler is now getting a little bit confused because now you're using interpolation, but the content of your string contains curly brackets. So in order to solve this, could we do the same things we did for the verbatim, adding double curly brackets? Actually no, because otherwise, because it's a raw string literal, it will be, the escaping doesn't matter, so you're gonna get twice the number of brackets. So Microsoft solved this problem by allowing you to specify as many dollar symbols you want before the quote sequence, in order to say how many curly brackets you need to specify a placeholder in a string. So here I'm saying, okay, there is $2 signs, and I need to use 2 curly brackets in order to wrap, a placeholder here. And this will basically work without me having to change anything around inside the file. So I didn't have to change the curly brackets of the JSON objects, for example. Okay. So basically, raw string literals allow you to deal with multi-line strings in C# without having to worry about escaping, unless you need to use interpolation. In that case, you need to simply use the number of a certain number of dollar symbols to specify how many curly brackets the compiler need to find to identify a placeholder inside the string. Okay, and the raw string literals are translated by the compiler down into normal ordinary strings. At the end of the day, down to IL, raw string literals do not exist. It's simply a compiler kind of sugar, syntactic sugar, if you want to say that. But the compiler also helps you to deal with indentation in a much nicer way using row string literals. I find row string literally extremely useful, especially when you want to write test, where often you want to have like a JSON directly as a string, or if you want to deal with code. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. So this program.cs is a C# program. What if I want to copy this program and save it inside a row string literal? So you might wonder, oh my God, now, because this program contains 3 double quotes, how can I actually use 3 double quotes, to create a new string? Well, the compiler does not force you to only use 3 double quotes. You could use as many double quotes you want. In this case, I'm going to need to use 4 double quotes in order to wrap the entire program into a variable. Let's try to do that. I'm going to create a new variable called code, and I'm going to use 4 double quotes. And then I'm going to wrap all of this around and do a semicolon. Now, the entire program that we wrote up until now is saved as a row string literal inside, another program. And I could print it. Oops. Run it. I didn't have to change absolutely anything. I didn't do any escaping to be able to copy the entire C# program and print it to the console. So as you can see, row string literals are extremely valuable and useful when you want to work with multi-line strings that contains a lot of special characters, so that you don't need to worry ever again about escaping them. So I invite you to use them in the new code bases, that you create, or you can use them, update the existing code base that you have that are using verbatim strings, and you can replace them with row string literals. And you're going to find that the code is going to be easier to read and maintain. Personally, I find this to be one of the best C# 11 features that has been introduced, and I was waiting for this for a long time. Thank you very much for watching.